So I woke up this morning and I checked Instagram and there was a new V12 Lamborghini revealed officially, and I thought that this has to be the Aventador replacement, but that was not the case. This is actually two one-offs Lamborghinis to celebrate the end of the naturally aspirated V12 engine, and I really like this design. I think it's like a melting pot of all the cool concepts that we've seen over the years. You have some Sesto Elemento in there, you have some Reventon as well, and some Veneno, and of course everything is built onto an Aventador chassis, creating these two cars, one coupe and one roadster. So what do we have when it comes to power? So it's a naturally aspirated 6.5 liter engine, creating 769 horsepower and 531 pound-feet of torque at 6,750 RPM. And you also have all-wheel drive in these two models. So what I want to do is just have a look at these models, both the coupe and the roadster. So the coupe is the Invincible, I think that's how it's pronounced, I'm not really sure. And then you have the roadster, which is the Authentica right here. So let's have a look at these, and I'm gonna let you know which one I prefer between these two. The front end, when I first saw this, I thought it looked maybe a little retro, because we have pretty static feeling for a modern V12 Lamborghini to have these lines here, for example, parallel lines, and then we have parallel lines here as well. It kind of makes it look a little static, but it also makes it look a little more retro than having too many lines and angles in the front end. And this headlight unit reminds me a lot of the Huracan Technica, which they recently unveiled, to have this black piece right here. And we have some new interesting treatments of the LED, the daytime running lights. You see, we have, instead of having this Y shape that we have on pretty much every single new Lamborghini these days, we have some sort of cluster of LEDs, which I think looks cool. It definitely gives it a clean identity and a unique identity for the design. And of course, we need to have the Lamborghini DNA, which means we need to have these lines in the hood go up from wide in the bottom of the hood to narrower up top. This is a typical Lamborghini design DNA that they kept, of course, here. Too bad these are one-offs. I would like to see more of them because I think they look really cool. As I said, I think it's a great combination of all previous or a lot of previous concepts that we've seen the past decade or so. I love this line right here. I think this is a gorgeous line on both of these, of course, because we have a bit of a sculpting done to this line. So it's not just an edge, it's actually has a little bit of a peak, and I think that peak just pushes the sharpness of this design even more than it was just a flat line. You can see it here as well. Very nicely done with this curvature that we have right here. Tiny curvature, but it makes a huge difference when it comes to sharpness and crispness in these designs. So moving down to the rear views of these, and I think this is definitely the money shot for this car, for these two cars. I kind of prefer the Roadster in this comparison here. I do like the wing of the Invincible, because it feels like this is very much taken from the Sesto Elemento, specifically these graphics that we have on the roof. Very much reminiscent of the Sesto Elemento graphics, which I think was one of the coolest concepts I've ever seen in real life. And then we have the same treatment that we have in the taillights, which is also something I can't remember if we've seen any designs from Lamborghini with this treatment. But then we have the same kind of style, of course, in typical Lamborghini fashion, having these hexagonal exhaust pipes here as well. And I think it looks like 3 bazooka tailpipes positioned in a pretty unique setup, creating more identity in the rear end. I mean, if you look at these from the rear end, there is no way you can think of this being anything else than Lamborghini, obviously. So they have their identity dialed in, and their design is properly tuned all across the lineup these days. I love that we have this treatment as well for the housing or the framing for the taillights. Reminds me a little bit of the Countach, which is not a bad thing, and it also makes the taillights, they sit a little deeper inside, like an angry eye socket in the rear. You can see we have these wings on the Authentica. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Koenigsegg Jesko absolute style of wing, and I prefer this rear end to the Invincible, as I showed you right here, because we have this wing in the Coupe, which looks cool, but I think it looks a little cleaner to have these kind of fins instead on the Roadster. And just look at the treatment of the greenhouse of the Roadster. We have this glass piece cutting right here, and it makes for a very unique piece of glass. I'm not sure if this actually can go down, probably, but it makes it feel like a bit of a cocoon, and then you have this open space for your head sitting right there, looking out at the side. And here you can clearly see the lines that I'm talking about with this peak, and how much more sharpness it adds to the feeling of this specific line. It's like a connection like this is not sharp enough for Lamborghini. They want to have a bit of a peak right up the line there to create this very crisp line over the rear axle and the front axle as well. Now looking at the interior, and this is pretty surprising because I think they wanted to keep it very lightweight, and all these features that you see here, for example, the air outlets, these pieces, and this piece up here, and this piece here as well. Maybe this center console as well. All of this has been 3D printed. But the thing is, if you look at this, you have one digital display, gauge cluster, but you don't have any infotainment system, what I can see here. Maybe, I don't think it can be hidden anywhere either, so it doesn't have this digital gauge cluster, digital infotainment screen that we have here on other Lamborghini models. And I think that's a good idea, because these are one-offs and they want to keep it as probably as timeless as possible. The last, most likely naturally aspirated Lamborghini before the next generation of Aventador comes, which is going to be a hybrid system. So I think it's a good idea to just keep it as clean as possible. You can see we have the same treatment in both of these. The same thing here. I still prefer the interior of the Authentica over the Invincible, because I love these yellow stitching, and I also like the toned down interior compared to these red graphics that we have in the steering wheel and on the seats on the Coupe. Very cool designs by Lamborghini, and I think it's a proper send-off of the naturally aspirated V12.